All right, let's talk about one of the biggest geopolitical challenges of our time, the relationship between the West and Russia. It's tense, to say the least. But the source material we're digging into today argues that there's a way to rebuild that bridge. So let's get right into it.
This is the question that hangs over everything, right? Are we just locked into a new Cold War? Is this cycle of hostility just inevitable? The blueprint we're looking at makes a bold claim. No, it's not. But, and it's a big but, getting there means we have to totally rethink our strategy.
And this isn't just some abstract problem for world leaders. As this quote points out, the fallout from this bad relationship is real, and it affects all of us. We're talking about things like unstable energy prices, the constant risk of military mistakes, and the loss of really important cultural and scientific partnerships.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at why this relationship matters so much. Then we'll take a quick trip back to see how we got here. After that, we'll dive into the blueprint itself, check out the specific actions it proposes, and finally, look at a 10-year roadmap to make it all happen. Okay, first up, let's talk about the stakes, because this isn't just about politics. It's really about global stability, and the ripple effects touch pretty much every part of our lives.
I mean, just look at the scope here. It's huge. We're talking about everything from the gas that heats our homes to the treaties that keep thousands of nuclear warheads on lockdown. This constant suspicion also fuels cyber threats and cuts off amazing collaborations between scientists and artists. It's really a lose-lose situation for both sides.
So, how do we end up in this mess? Well, the paper argues that before we can find a path forward, we have to understand the past, all the ups and downs that led us to where we are today.
This timeline breaks it down pretty clearly into three phases. You had the classic Cold War, of course, then came the post-Soviet thaw, where business was booming, but under the surface, resentment was building. And that brings us to the re-hardening phase we're in now, which is all about conflict, sanctions, and this dangerous security dilemma, where one side's attempt to feel safer just makes the other side feel more threatened, kicking off a vicious cycle.
And that cycle leads us to the biggest roadblocks we face today. You've got these major flashpoints. In Ukraine, it's a fundamental clash over sovereignty versus Russia's desire for a buffer zone. In the Baltic Sea, it's a constant military standoff. And up in the Arctic, as the ice melts, a whole new competition for resources and shipping lanes is heating up. These are the really tough knots that any new strategy has to figure out how to untangle.
Okay, so seeing all those challenges laid out, the big question is, now what? And that brings us to the core of this whole thing, the blueprint for shifting away from isolation and towards smart, strategic engagement. This chart really says it all. The old approach on the left, it's all about deterrence, isolation, and broad sanctions. The new approach this blueprint suggests, it completely flips the script. It's about finding cooperative stability, using multiple channels for communication, and building practical partnerships where it makes sense. It's a totally different way of thinking. Now, a key idea here is that old-school, government-to-government talks just aren't enough anymore. The secret sauce is this concept called multi-track diplomacy. Think of it less like a single highway for communication and more like a whole network of different roads, some for governments, some for experts, and some for everyday citizens. The goal is to make the whole process more flexible and creative. And here's how that network actually works. Track I is the official stuff, the formal summits and treaties you see on the news. Track 2 is where experts and academics can hash out ideas without all the political pressure. And track 3, which is so important, is all about people-to-people connections, culture, business, you name it. The idea is that these tracks all influence each other, creating a powerful feedback loop for finding solutions.
All right, so that's the theory. But what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's get into the specific, concrete actions the paper suggests to bring this whole blueprint to life.
And some of these ideas are really fascinating. I mean, a 24/7 crisis hotline to stop small mistakes from turning into huge disasters? That makes sense. Or a joint fund to manage energy and invest in green tech. It even suggests a joint Mars rover program. The point is to find those areas where working together is a win-win, and use them to slowly build back trust.
The paper also takes a really hard look at sanctions. And, well, the results are pretty telling. The whole point is to pressure governments, right? But the paper argues the effect there has been pretty limited. Meanwhile, the side effects, as you can see from this chart, have been huge. Crazy volatility in energy markets and Western companies losing out. It really suggests we need a much more surgical approach.
And this brings us back to that super important track 3 diplomacy,
the human element. The blueprint is big on rebuilding those personal connections that have been broken. Things that sound simple, like making it easier for students to get visas, or setting up a big arts festival. These aren't just feel-good ideas, they're strategic tools to break down stereotypes and build a real foundation of understanding for the future.
Okay, last section. This isn't just a wish list. The paper actually lays out a clear, step-by-step roadmap for how to put this all into motion over the next 10 years.
So here's the game plan. It starts with immediate, practical steps, like getting that crisis hotline running and renewing critical arms control treaties. From there, it builds momentum with things like the Energy Trust Fund and cultural events, and then moves on to tackle really complex stuff like the Arctic. You can see how each step is designed to build on the success of the last one.
And that really gets to the core philosophy of this whole thing. Forget about dramatic, all-or-nothing grand bargains that can fall apart in an instant. The focus here is on small, concrete, verifiable steps. It's about proving you're serious by taking one step at a time and building trust that way. It's all about small, steady wins.
So, we end right back where we started, with that fundamental question. This blueprint makes a pretty compelling case that a series of smart, practical, and consistent actions could, over time, actually rebuild that bridge. But the billion-dollar question remains, is the political will there to even take that first small step? What do you think?